And now, here's your host of Shaping Success, Wes Tankersley.
What is up, everyone? Welcome to Shaping Success. I'm your host, Wes Tankersley. Today, we have a special guest with us. As you know, this show is about showing people that success is possible no matter who you are. And we talk sometimes about dealing through adversity and going through things that you must, kind of power through. You have two choices. You can either power through it or you can kind of say, woe is me. And that's what this guest has done. She has powered through. Her name is Gigi Harper, and she currently owns a catering business, was in some real estate, and now she's driving in a different direction. But let's talk to Gigi and talk about her story. Gigi, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good morning.
I appreciate you reaching out to me and kind of wanting to share your story, and we'll get to that a little bit. But I think that you see my videos on TikTok, I think is where I met you, and you can kind of tell that I'm one of those people who think that you have a story to share, and no matter what you've gone through, you have to be willing to share that story because you may be able to help someone, no matter what it is, because people are dealing with what you've dealt with and what I've dealt with.
And that is why I pretty much reached out. I have kept it close to my heart and not really shared it a lot. There are certain people that I have shared it with. But something clicked in my brain, and the way that I was able to admit what had happened was because somebody told it to me. And so I feel that if I tell it to somebody, that maybe I can help.
Yeah. And so what we're talking about is, I believe, and I'm just going to kind of preface it and you can correct the mistakes in my conversation, but you were sexually abused at a young age. And, it kind of sounds like maybe just based on what you just said, you kind of repressed it for a little bit until someone kind of reminded you that it actually happened. Is that kind of where it's going?
No, I definitely knew it was happening.
Okay.
It went on from the time I was 9 until I was almost 13. I got a job at the YMCA as a junior counselor at the age of 13. And some people came in to talk about inappropriate touching to the kids. And I lost it because it was the first time somebody was speaking to me about it. And that was the first day I ever admitted that I had been abused for all of those years by a stepfather. And yeah, it was a thing. That was the first day that I told my mom.
Yeah, and that had to be, and you said you were about 13 when you finally were able to tell people about it?
Yeah. Yes.
Talk kind of about 13, so I have an 8-year-old daughter, and I just can only imagine, when I was a 13-year-old boy, it's a little bit different than being a girl going through all the emotions and the changes and things that are happening as a 13-year-old. How did you kind of deal with that? What did your mom think about that? How did you kind of, show people what was going on?
There was an angel who also was a junior counselor at the YMCA. Her name was Kiyomi. There was the camp director. Her name was Nora. So when I finally said the words out loud, there was a conversation on the phone with a rape hotline with information. And then Kiyomi actually took me to my mom's office. My mom's office was like 2 blocks away from the YMCA where I work. And I remember telling my mom in the lobby of the office that she worked in. And I remember my mom was whiter than white. And man, that day she was like transparent because she lost it. We never knew how we got home that night. from the office. Like, it's all blank. My mom had already kicked him out of the house about 2 weeks earlier because of his drinking problem.
Uh-huh.
He easily would drink a 12-pack of beer a day,
Jeez.
easily. And so she had already kicked him out. And then it was kind of like the perfect storm because she had kicked him out. These people came, talked about inappropriate touching, rape hotline, tell mom.
Yeah.
And so mom kind of lost it. I remember that her friends Sherry and Theo came to the house that night. I remember I was on the sofa with Sherry crying, and I remember hearing my mom in the kitchen with Theo, and Theo talking her down because that woman was going to take a knife and go kill somebody.
Right.
And he was like, that's not going to do anything for Gabrielle. You need to be here for her, and you need to take care of her.
Right.
We'll do the police, we'll do the shrink, we'll do the doctors. We're going to do all of that, but you can't do that.
Well, telling someone is probably the hardest part, I would think, that something has happened to you. But I feel like it probably gets a little bit harder after that. What's kind of the process after this happens, right? So you tell your mom. Your mom is obviously emotional wreck, probably because she can't believe that this is happening in her own house. And then you have to go through calling the police, going through all those other things. What was that like?
The police, the police station was really hard for me because I'm a 13-year-old girl.
Yeah.
And my mom's second husband had a certain look. And when we went to the police station, unfortunately, the police officer I had to talk to was a man who looked exactly like my stepdad.
Yeah.
And it was like, are you kidding me right now? And I remember being at the police station and him pretty much telling my mom it's her word against his word.
Mm-hmm.
And I had already had issues. I had eating issues. I had, while all of this was going on, I was always trying to be perfect. So good grades, try to be pretty, try to be popular. And I succeeded in all of that, but then I would go home and eat an entire loaf of bread and go throw up.
Yeah.
So there were things that were indications that something was very, very wrong, but nobody really noticed what was happening. But then when I finally did tell, then it was like all of the light bulbs turned on because I understood, oh, that's why that was happening. But yeah, the police station was horrid. It was a horrible experience. I do remember the policeman telling my mom, if you pursue this, I don't know if your daughter's going to survive this.
Yeah. It's a tough thing. I mean, I've kind of been through something similar, not with myself, but with someone who's close in my family. And it's hard because you're told that, right? You walk in there and the first thing is now we've got to find proof. Now we've got to find evidence that this actually happened. Then you have to start trying to prove it, that it did happen. And then a lot of times they end up sending you to counseling, trying to get all the information out. They try to, I mean, you're exposed. You're a 13-year-old girl who is just going through puberty, just going through the things that are normal. And now you have this super unnormal thing happening to you Where did it go after that? So you had to tell the story. It sounds like they believed you, but they basically told you that it doesn't matter because you had to prove it, right?
Correct. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory. I went through puberty extremely early.
Uh-huh.
So my time of month, my Aunt Flo came when I was 9.
Uh-huh.
And when that happened, that's when the abuse started.
As you started to develop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So at 9, you have no idea. First off, going through puberty at 9, I mean, it's very strange to raise your hand in 4th grade and say, I need to go to the bathroom because I need to like change my pad. I mean, that's just not normal
Right.
for a 9-year-old. And then when all of that stuff started happening, and he groomed me
Mm-hmm.
for a period of time. Um, I never knew my biological father. And so my mom had married him when I was 7.
Uh-huh.
And so to me, this was my dad.
Right.
And so that was the authority figure. That was my dad.
Yeah.
And yeah. So at 13, as you're going through all of this, and and then it's the shrinks, it's the counselors, it's the police, it's the doctors. It's a lot for a 13-year-old
Yeah.
who is trying to portray that she's the pretty popular girl.
Right.
It was just
To bury the feelings that you're having about something else.
right, because I never wanted anybody to know what was happening to me.
Yeah.
And I was told never to tell what was happening to me by him
Right.
in a very violent way. So, yeah.
Without going in, you can, this is an open conversation and you can tell me if you don't feel comfortable talking about it. That's completely fine. Just so other people understand, you said that he started grooming you at a young age and you don't have to go into detail, but can you just kind of tell us some of the signs so that people know what to look for? If maybe they're possibly having this happen in their house and they don't even know it. What are some of the ways that, predators groom kids to, kind of prepare them for what they're trying to do to them, really is what it's about, right?
And what's that question is a very important question. I actually have a lot of friends that this has happened to, female and male.
Right.
I have, and pretty much what it is, it's the gifts. It's I have a male friend who he was groomed by, unfortunately, a priest. And the priest used to take all of the kids down to the A's games. And it's like the gifts, it's the kindness, it's the compliments. It giving you a sense of security.
Right.
And then it's the slow, inappropriate touching. It's,
Right.
hey, come sit on my lap. Okay, now I'm sitting on your lap, and now hands are going places where they shouldn't be going.
Right.
I mean, it's a progression.
It's basically like earning your trust, really, and really making it seem like you're someone who really cares about you, really wants to take care of you, kind of giving you gifts and things like that, and then earning your trust and then taking advantage of that trust that they've earned.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's the same story with my female friends and with my male friends who have gone through this.
Well, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I think that most times, like as a male, like you don't think of that happening to men, and it does happen to men. I've heard lots of stories where it has happened to men, but the majority of what you think about, like my thing is always like, well, okay, so I'm ultra like worried about my daughter, right? I want to make sure that I'm taking care of my daughter, but my son is just as important in this. This could happen both ways. You don't know what's out there. You don't know what people are looking for. You don't know where it's at. So they all go through these issues.
Absolutely. I mean, I have a male friend who is older like me. I mean, I'm 51 years old. He's older than me. And he went through this as a child. And they actually got together with a lot of the victims. This person actually abused males and females.
Uh-huh.
And they're actually doing a class action suit right now. And it's one of the biggest class action suits that's going on for child molestation.
Yeah.
And but when I heard his story, and I didn't even know for all the years I was friends with him, I didn't know. And
Right.
we sat down one night, had a couple of glasses of wine, and this all came up, and it was like, oh my God, it's both ways.
Right.
And we talked about how it started, how we got groomed, and it was almost an identical story.
Yeah. It's just and the crazy thing is, I mean, you're about 10 years older than me, but I can only imagine at that time. Like it was a different story. I mean, this was a time when mental health was one of those things that, like, if something like this happened, like God forbid, a female got pregnant or something like this, they take you and they ship you off and you go somewhere else for a while and then you come back. I mean, it wasn't like, it was things that they hide. They don't talk about it. They don't want to expose it. They don't want people to know because they're so ashamed of what's going on. It had to be a crazy time at that in those.
I was very lucky in that my mom was a very progressive woman.
Mhm.
And when all of this came out, I mean, she seriously got me into counseling. Counseling. I went through a ton of counselors. Um, you have to do an interview process for
Right.
counselors because some of them just don't fit.
Yeah.
The counselor that finally worked for me was a guy named BJ, and he was hardcore and just said how it was, whereas the counselors I had had before were like, "Oh, take a bath and light some candles," and it was like, seriously, this is not helping anything.
Yeah, that's not going to help the situation. You need to talk about it. You need to get it out. That's crazy. Oh,
They're like, write in a journal. I'm like, that's not going to work.
yeah.
but but back in those days, so I mean, this is the
Early
80s.
80s. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, it just wasn't spoken about. Nobody talked about it, and so there was also the stigma of that in my mind
Uh-huh.
because I didn't know that this was happening to anybody else.
Right. So when you start, you guys went to the police, you started going through counseling. What happened? Your stepdad, did he go to jail? Did they convict him? What happened there? How did that go down?
Um, Funny story. Actually, it's not funny. Um, the police said that it would be his word against mine. Uh, I wouldn't survive a trial because they knew I was a little suicidal at that juncture of time.
Uh-huh.
He went back to LA. So I'm from San Francisco. So he had gone back to LA to live with his parents. And he ended up dying of a heroin overdose. And the needle actually never left his arm.
Dang. So, did you have closure after this happened? Did you feel better about the situation? I know obviously someone dying is not that big a deal, but this person has done something pretty bad to you. How did you feel after he passed away?
Um, After he passed away, I actually felt guilty, to be completely honest. I felt like somehow me wishing him dead for years,
Hmm.
that I did it,
Yeah, that you were
uh,
responsible for it.
that I was responsible for it.
It's
Um,
amazing the feelings that you go through because I mean, obviously he did something horrible to you, and having the feeling of wishing that he was dead is not. It's not like I mean, I would feel the same way. It's like this person has harmed me in a way, has not ruined me, but has changed my innocence, has turned me into something that I never got the opportunity to have those relationships with people in a normal way because I don't know what that is. I learned it the wrong way, right?
and you have to also understand, I was 13, so I intellectually can't even put those pieces together yet.
Right.
I had no clue. So when we got the phone call that he was dead, it was, ooh, did I do that?
Yeah.
And intellectually, that should never have been the thought. No, he did that.
Yeah.
He did that to himself.
Right.
Um, I believe that he was just a broken human being.
Hmm.
And it took me years, I mean, years,
Right.
to actually forgive the situation.
Hmm.
Because without forgiving the situation, you live with that burden on your shoulders,
Right.
and you finally have to be like, No, this was not me.
Right.
I did not do this. I was not responsible for this. I was not responsible for the abuse. I was not responsible for the death. I was not responsible for any of that.
Yeah.
And once you forgive all of that, it's amazing how wonderful your life can turn out. And you actually, I mean, in my case, I don't know other people's stories, but in my case, you are a lot stronger for it.
Yeah. How long after everything happened how long did it take? You said a long time. And you mentioned that you're like 50 and it happened when you were 13. When did you finally come to that realization that it wasn't your fault?
In my 20s,
Hmm.
like my mid 20s, is when I realized it. However, in my mid 20s, I wasn't ready to speak on it to other people because, once again, different time and age
Right.
where this just wasn't something that people talked about.
Right.
And now I'm 51. I'm like, you know what? If I can say this out loud and just reach one person,
Hmm.
because there might be somebody out there who's listening to this, who's keeping this all inside and has never said anything or told anybody.
Right.
If I can help them, then I'm good.
Yeah. And
And
I
it's
think
worth
that
it.
for sure. And again, like we talked about in the beginning, that's it. Everyone needs to hear your story. There is one person that can help. I understand that like this is a real sensitive situation and it's something that not everyone is willing to talk about, especially like where we come from, in the 80s and the 70s and things like that. These are times where we didn't talk about that stuff. And then being able to talk about it now is definitely good for other people to hear and to understand that they're not alone. There is someone who's been through it.
Right. And one thing that is also important to me is that women are more able to express what has happened to them.
Yeah.
Where is my camera? There it is.
You're okay.
Women are more able to express the things that have happened to them.
Uh-huh.
Men are not.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I'm making a generalization, but it's a true generalization. And so that's why I made a point of bringing up my male friends that have gone through this,
Yeah.
because they need an outlet to speak their truths also.
Right. Yeah, and I appreciate you saying that, because I honestly, like, I think you're right. I think that, I talk a little bit more about my feelings in people that are my age group, and I've just kind of recognized that it's necessary. I think that you have to, but there are so many, like, from that era that you don't talk about that. You don't talk about anything. You're tough. You get, you break your arm, you go back to work the next day. You wrap it up and you go. You're supposed to be tough. That's what you're supposed to be. So if you start talking about something like this that happened to you, you're not tough anymore. And I think that's a big misconception, because there's so many people who are out there that are hurt. There are so many people out there, like you mentioned, suicidal because something happened to them, but they can't talk about it with anyone, because if they do, then, the ramifications of what happened. So, I mean, it doesn't matter male or female, but male, honestly, like, you're right. That's the situation.
Well, and like, I'm Generation X, and
Yeah.
we are we don't care. We don't say anything.
Right.
We just survive. And and that is a little bit sad, because how many people are suffering in silence because we were raised to keep our mouths shut, pretty much.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what it was. That's the truth. I mean, it's like, we're the ones who don't say anything. We're the ones who watched ourselves as kids growing up. We're the ones who went out and played for hours and no one knew where we were at, and that's it.
Hey, I grew up in San Francisco, and let me tell you, I started taking the bus to school. And when I say the bus, I'm not talking a school bus. I'm
Right.
talking Muni. I'm
Yeah.
talking public transit in San
Yes.
Francisco when I was like 8 years old,
Right. Yeah, and
and
that's
came home
crazy
by
to think.
myself. Yeah.
Right. And if you do that now, it's like child abuse.
Oh yeah, no. If that happened now, the parents would be called to CPS. I mean,
Yeah.
it was just completely a different time. I mean, during the summer, you would leave the house and okay, it's 6 o'clock.
Right.
It's dinner time. Go home.
Yeah.
But you were outside all day long and drinking out of the hose because that
Right.
was the only water you could get.
Yep. You're outside playing. That's where you go. You don't want to go inside, go get a glass of water. Just go where it's close.
Well, not only that, your parents didn't want you inside.
Right. Don't mess up my house.
Exactly.
Right. Oh, so you've kind of moved on from this. You're still, I mean, I'm assuming that you have to work through it every day. It's something that probably never leaves your mind, but you were able to move forward. You talked about, a little bit of suicidal thoughts and things like that, but you tackled it, you moved forward. Well, how does it affect you now in later on in life? Because I mean, we're talking 30 plus years ago right now.
Right. I do not think about it every day. I
Uh-huh.
don't. Um, it does come up in relationships a little
Mhm.
bit, because I have a little bit of trust issues.
Right.
um, and if somebody tries to kind of control me, I'm out.
Right.
Because it brings me back to that situation in my
Mhm.
mind. Um, but to be honest, at this juncture of time, it really is not a thought anymore. The thought I have now with regards to it is how can I share it and make somebody else better?
Right.
So that's more of where that goes. Yeah, there were definitely times of suicidal thoughts. There was eating.
Eating disorders.
Yeah.
That's really what it is. I
Um,
mean, right?
yeah, yeah. Um, the big joke in the family was I had eaten an entire can of cranberry sauce. You know, that jelly cranberry
Yeah.
sauce? Yeah, puked my guts out. Man, that stuff. And I can't eat cranberries
Yeah.
anymore. But yeah, the eating disorder was, uh, but it was well hidden. I would
Right.
go to school and nobody knew. All they knew is, ooh, Gabrielle's the popular one. Gabrielle's got straight A's. Gabrielle does this. Oh, Gabrielle got into that special high school where you had to have a 4.0 GPA to get in.
Right.
Like, nobody knew my inner demons or what I was dealing with.
So what would you tell someone now? What would you tell yourself when you were 13 differently than you would tell yourself now? So someone who was going through the same situation that you were going through, what's the best way to handle it?
Tell somebody. Open your mouth. Open your mouth. Tell somebody. Get help. Trust that they're going to believe you and trust that you're going to be okay. But definitely open your mouth.
Yeah.
Um, I wish back then I had said something years earlier. I mean, because this started when I was 9. I
Yeah.
mean, this was a long period of time. um, I wish at 9 when it first started, but at 9 I didn't even know when it first started happening. It was so gradual
Right.
that I didn't even realize what was happening and didn't realize how horrible and horrific this was going to be on my life in the long run.
Yeah.
Um, but if I had to talk to myself as a child, I would have just said, go to your mother and tell your mom what's happening. And what's horrible is my mom was my best friend. I lost my mom 6 years ago. Um, my mom was my best friend. I loved and adored her more than anything. That woman had no idea what was going on under her roof.
Right.
No idea. And when she found out what had happened, I felt so bad because of the guilt that she had
Right.
as a mom, knowing that that had happened to her child.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I honestly feel like that's probably the toughest thing is like recognizing that, not being able to recognize it because it's hidden so well. Are there any things
Oh,
that
yeah.
you would say like for parents to look for? I mean, be more
Um,
involved or any way that she could have maybe known what was going on.
there's a couple of things. In my case, it was the eating thing,
Hmm.
the eating disorder. Um, she'd be like, "Why is my daughter doing this?" But it never dawned on her that there was something going on in my brain where I was trying to harm myself.
Uh-huh.
So there was that. The obsession with perfection for the outside world,
Uh-huh.
but the total depression when I was inside the house.
Yeah.
Like I was two completely different people.
And did she see that? Like, did she see the? I mean, obviously she didn't recognize it, but like, would it be something that like, you're getting all dressed up and everything, and you're going out and you're trying to be the popular kid, then you come home and you're just like gone? Like, did she notice that difference and just thought it was something different, or what do you think?
I think that because she had me at such a young age, she had me at 18.
Hmm.
So she was young herself. I don't think she recognized it. I think in her mind, she just thought, "Oh, it's puberty, and she's a teenager, or
Yeah.
she's she's an 11-year-old, and she's just moody.
Right.
She got her period. She's 9 years old. She's just moody, and she's got PMS."
Yeah.
I don't think she had the tools
Hmm.
to recognize what was happening.
Yeah. And I think that that's something and you were the first child as well.
I'm the only child.
You're the only child. Yeah. So I mean, definitely that's a big thing right there. Not knowing as a new parent. I think of like, my kids are 8 and 7 months. And I think about, thank God that I started later, because if I was an 18-year-old, I would have no clue what I'm doing. I still feel like I have no clue, and it's hard at 41. But, I can only imagine like having only one child and then not knowing, not knowing how. I mean, because it's raising children's an experiment. Yeah, I'm just going to tell it how it is. That's what it is. Like every kid is different. Every situation is different. Everything is just different, and that's got to be tough anyway in its own.
The big joke in our family was that I actually raised my mom.
this It could be true. It could be true. Man.
Yeah, but she didn't recognize because she didn't know what to look for. And in that day and age, nobody spoke of it.
Right.
So in this day and age, people speak of it. And so parents are more aware
Right.
of the actions of their children. So
Hmm.
if you saw a huge difference in your 8-year-old, you'd be like, what is going on?
Right.
You would question it immediately.
Yeah.
So it's a different day and age.
Yeah. It's better. I'd say it's definitely like that's one thing that is better, that we talk more about it. I mean, I think that there's a lot of things that we put too much stress on, but that is definitely the thing of being able to recognize what is going on a little bit easier when you actually are able to have an open dialogue about what could be going on instead of like suppressing it.
Right. And I mean, I have girlfriends that it has happened to. They told and they were not believed.
Yeah.
And once again, different day and age. It was like, let's sweep this under the rug. Your uncle didn't do that to you, and we're going to go to the family reunion now. I
Right.
mean, it was just like I said. My mom was awesome in that she took care of me immediately.
Yeah. She believed you. She worked with you. She helped you to get through what, it wasn't like, let's hide this. Let's take care of this. Let's hit it head on and make sure that everything is addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, and it was hard. I'm not gonna lie. It was hard for her. Um, he actually was 18 years older than my mom,
Oh, geez.
and he had 5 previous children.
Hmm.
And I know for a fact that the 2 youngest children knew what was happening to me,
Hmm.
and nobody said anything. And
Yeah.
then when I finally did say what was happening, the older children of his, I can't even mention the names or things that they said about me and my mom,
Hmm.
because they they just couldn't accept that their dad had done something like that.
Right.
And what was weird is when he died with a needle in his arm, it was like a light bulb went off for some of them,
Yeah.
because they were like, how broken was he?
Right. Yeah, that's it. It's just a tough world. It's like you have to realize that this is maybe they realize that, well, maybe that is possible now. Like you see that, and it just it's a tough one. It
Yeah.
definitely is. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story. Do you feel comfortable, sharing with anyone, like reaching out, or is there a place where people can reach out to you and kind of talk with you, or do you just kind of want to tell your story?
Um, if somebody needs to tell their story, they're more than welcome. I'm on TikTok. Um, I'm on Your Spot. So those would be the two places
Okay.
to find me. And yeah, I'm open to speaking to anybody with regards to this, because once again, my purpose is I want to help.
Right.
Like, I when I had this idea that I needed to do this, I want to continue doing this because I want people to heal
Yeah.
and be okay.
Yep. And I think that it coming from someone who's been through the same thing, it makes it a little bit easier to have that conversation with someone like you who's been through it versus someone who hasn't been through it, because they don't understand. They can, they can, they can think about it, but they don't really understand where you're coming from because they haven't been there.
Right. They don't understand the I mean, I understand I used to hide. I used to hide in the house, in closets, in the garage, in the sheds. I mean, I would hide so that he couldn't find me.
Right.
I understand that. And somebody else who's gone through it will understand that. But somebody who hasn't gone through it is going to not comprehend what that feeling is and what that desperation is.
Yep. Well, I appreciate you taking the time to share your story. I'll make sure that I put your TikTok link in the show notes so that people can hear it. You guys can reach out to me too if you want to get a hold of Gigi. I'll help you. I'll help you do that. But thank you very much for taking the time.
Thank you very much for giving me a platform to hopefully reach somebody.
Yep. I think I know that it will. So, all right. Well, we'll talk. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Thanks. Yeah. All right, everyone. Well, that is the end of the show. I just wanted to say thank you for tuning in. I want to say thanks again to Gigi for sharing her story, because I think that there are a lot of people who have gone through this type of situation with sexual abuse, and it's not funny. And you may have a hard time recognizing what's going on or seeing what's going on without without doing anything about it. So ask those questions, talk to your children, make sure they know that, this is not okay. And they may be going through that. You don't know who it is. It could be a family member. It could be someone close to you, near and dear, and someone you would never expect to do something like that. So think about that as you go out through your day. I appreciate you all hanging out with me. There is some updated stuff on the merch page. So if you're looking for stickers, Shaping Success Network, or Shaping Success gear, shirts, t-shirts, hats, things like that, please feel free to let me know. And thank you for all your support. Until next time, I challenge you to find the shape of your success.